Hello everybody and welcome to tonight's episode of MHTV. I'm Vanessa Garrity and I'm here with my colleague Nicky Lambert and our guest tonight. And we're talking tonight about spirituality in mental health and more specifically about spiritual support, mental health within mental health organisations. I'll come on to our guest in a minute to introduce herself, but first of all, I'm going to hand you over to Nicky to say a few words about social media and how we're going to be doing that tonight. Okay, Nicky, over to you.
Absolutely. Hello, everybody. And we're really glad you're joining us tonight. And we're on MHTV tonight on the hashtag. So if you are a stray MHNR 2020 wandering around, please tweet us on MHTV just for tonight. And we're absolutely happy to have you along. If you are joining on Facebook or want to join on Facebook, you go to the Unite Mental Health Association page and we're live now, so you'll be able to follow us there. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Nicky. And Yasmin, over to you to introduce yourself first of all.
Okay, thank you very much. Hi all. Yes, my name is Yasmin Hamid. I am a chaplain with the Mental Health Trust, and I'm known as a generic chaplain. And we work on a pastoral and spiritual care services.
Brilliant. And thank you for joining us tonight. I'm really looking forward to tonight's conversation. And I guess what intrigues me at the outset really is that you call yourself a generic chaplain. Can you explain a little bit more about what a generic chaplain is and the differences between a traditional chaplain and a generic one?
Thank you, Vanessa. Yeah, the difference between the two is when there is a chaplain who goes into a ward, he would be faith-based, i.e. Catholic or Church of England. When it comes to generic chaplains, it means that they would work with people with any faith or no faith. So basically, it could be a Church of England, Catholic, Hindu, Muslim, whatever it may be, or maybe a patient, service user, or staff who doesn't have any faith. So we would work on the basis of spirituality and pastoral care.
That's really interesting. And how would you do that, given like the number of different religions that people find themselves connected to these days? How would you work in a way that met lots of different religious ways of life?
Very interesting question. The way we would work, or I would work, because when you go into a ward or if you see a patient or a staff service user, you do not look at their religion, what their background is. The actual discussion, the connection is based on what the individual brings to you. Yeah. So you're not going in there with a preconceived idea. Okay, I'm going in there, I'm going to dictate whatever it is, what they would want to talk about. So it's about relationship, connecting with them, and see what they feel comfortable with.
Yeah, I think that's really important because there's an assumption, isn't there, that chaplaincy is just about providing people with support in terms of their religion. But obviously, it's also about looking at people's spiritual beliefs. And certainly, you work in a mental health organisation. Imagine, you're working with lots of people in crisis. And, if people are in crisis, isn't that a time when they look towards their sort of spirituality, perhaps more than at any other time in their lives, I would say.
Yes, and with mental health, I think one of the things that one has to be mindful of is that mental health is such that you have to be extra vigilant about what you do and what you say and your terminology, because some would go on the path of faith, and some poorly people will say, no, I don't want to know about the religion. I do not care about it, because why am I here? Why did God put me in this position? So I don't believe in it. So this is one of the reasons why I said that when you go in there, you look at the individual, and not what their faith was or is or doesn't have, and it helps. And if you connect with their spirituality, some people would say my spirituality is, I feel happy when I watch TV. The other one says, I like going out for walks. It's all about connection and what makes them feel good about it or good about themselves.
Yeah. So, I mean, talking about that, what intrigues me as well, if you're happy to share with us, is your personal journey and what led you into chaplaincy.
It has really been a progressive journey, and my inspiration was my mother. We come from a very kind of a religious family. Being a Muslim, you know, you brought up in a spiritual way and all that. But my mother was very inspirational. There was a time when, in early days of my life, I had worked in different areas, in different jobs, and I was sitting with my mom one day, and I said to her, "You know what? I just don't feel happy. I don't know. I'm just not happy about this job." She said, "What do you want to do?" So I said, "I'm not sure." And Mom's answer was, "You like talking to people and listening to people. So why don't you look for something in that area?" That started my journey, which led me to go into a day service where I started working with people with learning disabilities. And there was a young man there with whom I had a good relationship, working relationship. He was our service user. And something changed in this young man, and his behavior changed. So it gave me the opportunity to sit with him and talk to him, only to find out that he was grieving. He was scared of dying. And to find that now his father has died and he doesn't know how to grieve. You know, he was, so that gave me the opportunity, and I started thinking about it and said, no, this is something that I want to go into. So I became a counsellor, followed by, doing theology and into chaplaincy, which was a part-time. First, it was volunteer work, onto full-time position. In between, I've been with the NHS for many years now. So that's the journey in terms of my spirituality and where it's brought me now.
That's really interesting, quite profound, and a similar journey in a sense to the journey into mental health nursing, isn't it? In some ways, in terms of the human connection and want to help people in that way. If people are watching who are interested in a career in chaplaincy, what would your advice be? Where would they go? I know you mentioned that you did theology, but is that the only route into chaplaincy? What would you recommend?
Absolutely not. Well, you know, I hope that I don't say anything that it kind of, reflects on me, but the chaplaincy is something about yourself, what kind of person you are. If you are the kind of person who likes to help people, likes being with people, you know, you hurt when other people hurt, you cry when other people are in pain, their pain is yours. If you're the kind of person and you connect with people, I think look into chaplaincy, because it's a lovely, lovely position to be in, where you can sit there and maybe change someone's life just by listening to them.
That's a really nice message, isn't it? I know that I used to share an office for a long time when I worked in a mental health trust with a chaplain, and I was really struck by the sort of humanity of the job, and the things that she got to do, particularly, you know, some very difficult times, you know, such as when we had, you know, deaths of service users within the organisation, particularly people that had, you know, were known to services for quite a long time. And I really felt that her role came into its own, really, in terms of supporting the family, but also supporting, you know, staff in the organisation, you know, to come to terms with it, but in a very human way. It wasn't done in a particularly religious way. It was done in a way where she was really good at bringing people together, really, to celebrate people's lives and talk about the person. So, so it really struck me at the time. I think before then hadn't obviously knew what chaplains did, but I think it did change my perspective because of my relationship with her. And the other thing that struck me was about support, because I felt that it was quite an isolated role. Would you say that, Yasmin? And where would you go for support as a chaplain? Because you must deal with some quite difficult...
I'm absolutely blessed that we have, we're a very small team of chaplains, but, my manager, who is absolutely a gem of a man, whom I can bring anytime and talk to. So I've never ever felt that I was isolated or didn't have anyone to talk to, because you do in chaplaincy, like any job, when you've had a stressful day, you do need to talk to someone before you take it home, because you have a home life too. You've got children at home. You don't want to take it home. So yes, I have a great source of support. Very humble and pleased with that.
Yeah.
And Nicky, any questions on social media?
Already.
Oh,
yeah,
great.
Absolutely. So Alfonso, hello. COVID-19 has limited most activities and visits on wards. Were the spirituality needs of service users still met and acknowledged, and how did you manage this?
Yeah, that's a great question.
It is absolutely a fantastic question, and this is what I have been working on since March, when it happened, when we were told that COVID-19 and what the government guidance was, where families could not visit patients. There was a lot of confusion, a lot of anxiety with the staff. Where I was asked if, amongst my colleagues, we were asked we would be willing to be redeployed in the area where there was COVID-19. And we kind of very gladly said yes. But I remember my first day, I need to tell you about this journey in order to appreciate what happened, is that when I arrived that first day, I was so scared because I didn't know what I was going into. It was an unknown territory for me.
Yeah.
When I went in there, staff were anxious, but the brilliant thing was that it became a united family. We all kind of got together and started working together. Now, in terms of activities, there wasn't much activity because everyone had to be mindful of the virus. Yeah. So, we couldn't do much activities. But what I did in my role, and I thank God for that, is that the wards that I was working in were predominantly of different faith to mine. Most of them were Christians, some Jewish people, non-faith people. So wherever I found out what their faith was, I actually purchased a Bluetooth speaker, together with my iPhone. I tied it around my neck, put the PP on, and would go into the rooms of the patients who were struggling or were dying. And we would put on whether it's hymns, Lord's Prayer, any requirement, whatever they needed at the time, because of all the people, I appreciated that because I knew that the family out there who can't come in to hold their loved ones, who were taking their last breath, know that there is someone in the room, with them. It's of great comfort, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So together with the managers who happens to be Christians, we would find out what their faith is, and accordingly I would play their religious prayers. And this is how we did whatever, I wouldn't call it activities, but this is what we did to make it easy for the service user, for patients, and then go back and ring the family up and say, he or she didn't die alone. We were in the room with them.
So important.
Incredibly tough, but also, incredibly privileged to spend time with people at the end and be able to comfort them. And, just think, if it was your own friends and family, just knowing that somebody was there on the end. I mean, it must have been absolutely horrendous. Like everybody, particularly on social media, reading the sort of personal stories on social media, including, people that I know who lost relatives and weren't able to be there with them in hospital. And, it must have brought such relief to the family and comfort knowing that somebody was there with them at the end. And I can't imagine it would be.
Yeah, and I suppose one of the things that I was kind of reflecting on was when my mother was dying. I remember that I was sitting next to her, not during COVID, she died many years ago, and I remember holding her hand and saying, "Mum, I remember this touch. I remember your soft skin. When you're gone, that's going to be in my heart." Yeah. And then to think about the families who couldn't do any of that, who couldn't come and even sit with them or, for the last few minutes or before their death. So it was kind of humbling for me that God had given me that opportunity to sit there and do what I could. Yeah. I didn't compromise my faith in any shape or form. But I am hoping that I provided for people who are struggling with their own.
Yeah.
I think so. And I think it's a very odd thing, isn't it, that it's out of our own kind of pain and grief and loss that we're able to really support and connect to other people. It's almost like pain is the price you pay for love sometimes, isn't it? And to be able to share that and to be able to connect to people is so important. And I wonder how good a job we sometimes do in nurse education and even in nursing practice at talking about that side of the work. I think, I've learned a lot from the chaplains I've worked alongside about, that connection and the importance of it. And also the relief of knowing there isn't a right thing to say. It's about being there. And it sounds, when you read it in a book, it doesn't make any sense. But when you do it and you go through it with somebody and you're with somebody when they're dying, it makes such a big difference to how you understand life, I think, and what's really important.
Absolutely. And one of the things which was very lovely to see was that the managers, I asked if they wouldn't mind joining in the prayers, because they're of the same faith, or to say the goodbyes, to the way they want to do it, so they could go back and talk to the families and said, actually, I was also there, and these are the things that we did for that individual. So it was very humbling experience.
Absolutely, and something you'll never forget. And it's profound, isn't it, really, being able to do that and having to do that as well when none of us were expecting any of this to happen. As you say, when you got the phone call in March and you were told, it's the same for everyone, isn't it? The world over, nobody was expecting to be in this position at all. And, the way health services have responded and, the individuals in particular within them has just been unbelievable, hasn't it? And remarkable. And I suppose as well, I was just thinking about not just, being there at the end of people's lives, but also has chaplaincy had a role around, supporting people and families in particular afterwards? Because it's been an incredibly difficult time, hasn't it, in terms of funerals and ceremonies and things and the restrictions around people being able to say goodbye.
Indeed. And one of the things that, and we are still, as chaplains, working with is relatives needed support, needed reassurance, not being able to go to the funeral. There was a limited number of it, but also it triggered some stuff in our staff. Yeah. Because they've been through that journey. A lot started happening. Partners were furloughed. Lots of things happening at home, issues, concerns. So the staff needed a lot of support because initially everyone was on adrenaline. They were just getting on with it. And then when we all stopped, what do we do now? And that's when it triggers off for many staff who needed support to just talk about it and go through the journey. And it may not be even about the patient who's died. It's triggered something in their lives. They've lost someone to COVID, or some, like my mother, it triggered me with thinking about her. So it's still ongoing. Relatives, it's still ongoing, that they keep in touch, because I think that this is that little attachment to the final moment of their loved one dying. So that, I was there and the manager was there. So when they're talking, it's some sort of comfort.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, sometimes we're repeating things that we've already said, but they want to hear it, and why not?
Yeah.
I've got some more comments from people watching. So thank you very much. Michael Haslam, as mental health professionals, we have our own toolkits to use with service users and patients, but the importance of just being present with someone holding their hand is underestimated. So I think people are agreeing with you. And Jade, who's a student, as you answered a question about working in COVID at the moment, just saying how interesting is this. Thank you, Nicholas, for joining in as well. We've got another question. Spirituality is such an important aspect in our human experience, whatever that might mean to us. And with COVID-19, we've heard and seen such powerful stories. Thank you for sharing yours with us. In terms of nurse education, how come there's so little taught about spirituality? Is there anything that we can do about that in terms of educating staff to just be a little more prepared, maybe, to look at some of these questions?
Yeah.
What a lovely question. We are in talks at the moment, because this is the time when chaplains or chaplaincy or spiritual care has actually surfaced. We were always in the background, and still are with some people, but people didn't know there was a chaplaincy department or spiritual care department. But now, because we're at the forefront of it, people ring us up on a regular basis. People who didn't know what chaplaincy was are curious because they've seen us work. So yes, we hope and pray that we get more chaplains, because there is a great need, and it should be highlighted what chaplains, not just me, but around the country, what chaplains are really doing and not actually talked about. So I think it would be great to kind of highlight and touch on what chaplains are doing. And share the stories.
Yeah,
it would be great. Yeah. Thank you.
Is there some sort of network within chaplaincy? Do you regularly connect with chaplains from other organisations around the country and things, or and do more local contacts?
What first of all, I would easily say that one of the places to kind of connect is with College of Healthcare Chaplaincy. Yeah. Once you're a member there, you will get to know a lot about it. There's a lot of educational stuff. We're having a conference in October. Please do join us, whoever can. We're from mental health or mental health settings. Join us in that conference. And there are religious leaders or religious sects where they have their own WhatsApp groups of chaplaincy. If anyone is interested, I could always find out for them and send them the link. There's many groups now where you could connect with chaplains. If you want a generic chaplain, or you want as a your own faith-based chaplain, we can always connect you with them. So it's not an issue.
Yeah, great if we could later to that.
I've got a couple more questions. Busy tonight. So a question from Dave. We know that staff working through COVID have suffered immensely with the stress and distress and moral injury. How have chaplains been supporting NHS staff? Well, you are NHS staff, aren't you?
Yes.
From start. Yeah.
Yes, and as I said, my practice has been totally kind of, I am usually in their face, as you were. I would go in there. Once I've visited patients, I would actually approach most of the staff and say, how are you doing? Can we have 5 minutes? Can we have a chat? And this is how I have been, and my colleagues have been supporting staff. And it's on the increase where staff really do need support. And thank you for asking that question, because it's very important. I'm emphasizing this, that staff can actually talk to the chaplains who will make time. I make it my business to go and ask each individual how they are within the ward, within my time limit that I have.
A question from Adrian. Hello, Adrian. We can't have holistic care without looking at biopsychosocial spiritual care. So how do we help staff and NHS staff understand and listen to others talking about their fears and their hopes? So what do we need to do?
I think that the best thing, I don't have all the answers, so please excuse me if I don't have the right answer here. But I think it's about connecting with the staff. To see the staff, what they're bringing in, and where it's taking you. Do the journey with the staff, because they do need it. They need someone to hold them, to talk to them, to support them. All this is about acknowledging that the staff are struggling, and just be with them. Sorry.
I was going to say, I think particularly in mental health, we do deal with death, but we deal with it in a very different way. We often experience sudden, shocking death, and that's a very challenging thing that brings its own problems and brings its own sadnesses. But I think that a lot of mental health staff weren't necessarily prepared for the kind of physical aspect of long-term care. We were suddenly in the situation where we were suddenly nursing people in end-of-life situations, not able to transfer people, and suddenly having older adults who are aging and dying as a result of that, but also people with COVID who were nursing for the first time. And I think a lot of staff were very afraid during that, not necessarily just because of COVID, although that was scary, but just afraid that suddenly people were exposed, because you always want to do the absolute best for somebody. And I think if you haven't necessarily had to work in that kind of palliative way before, it is quite frightening, because you only get one chance. You don't want to mess it up for somebody. So I think there was a lot of anxiety.
I think what struck me as well in mental health was, and in learning disability services as well, was that when people are dying, who, nurses have had like long-term relationships with these people.
Absolutely.
And in care homes. So, if you work in a care home, it's you develop relationships with the people you're working with. If you lose someone, it's very different to somebody being admitted, onto a hospital ward and dying the same evening. And I think, incredibly tough. And I don't know really how much emphasis has been on that, really, about, the sort of emotional labour that nurses have had to go through over this period has been, incredible, really. Not just nurses, of course, but, focusing on nurses, being a nurse. And because I think nurses are often the people who are there a lot of the time, aren't they? They're often the people that have got the longer relationship with people in ward settings and in care homes. So,
Got another question. How do you manage a situation where families have one belief, but the service user follows another path during a period of stress?
Well, for us, it's about the service user, whatever the service user needs, because he's our patient. So we would have to follow what his wishes are, or her wishes. And if it's an adult, obviously, that's exactly what we do.
Another question, how can we increase the competence of nurses to be able to provide spiritual care?
I think, Nicky, you answered the question, or I think Vanessa, it's about education. We need to be going into the wards. We need to do a lot more of training. One of the things that I have actually spoken to my team is that when we're employing new people, where there's a training going on, that spiritual care should be part of that training. That if you come across a patient or staff who needs, we're here. So it should be a mandatory training about knowing about spiritual care. and the chaplaincy department. So it's about education, I think, and this is the only way. And if we all work together, we can achieve it.
Absolutely, I think so too. Yeah. I've got a question from a student nurse, or from a WhatsApp group saying, "What's the best part of your job?" Which is quite nice, actually, because I thought they were going to ask what's the worst part of your job. I got to the bit where it said best. I was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, yeah, we like that.
Oh, it's a fab question. It is really, the best thing is I love people, right? And when I am able to sit there and just listen, it's not about me talking. About me listening and seeing that it's made a difference to that person just talking to me. Somebody who's just walked in really, really upset, sat down, started talking, offloading, and suddenly you see the changes in them. It's about connecting with people. I just love doing that. And yes, that's my answer.
Another one, which I think this one's a little bit harder. But okay, let's see what you think. So this one again,
you can take over then.
This is another second year saying, what's when you're working in mental health, do people's mental distress get mixed up with their religious beliefs, and how do you manage that?
Oh,
that's
absolutely.
a really good question, actually.
Absolutely. On many occasions, we do get that somebody who's come with a faith, and because he's so angry that he's not well, he then starts blaming God. And when he starts blaming God, he doesn't want to know anything about God. So how would I manage it? As I said before, I look at a person, what he's all about or she's about. If he doesn't want to talk about God, then I don't want to make it worse for him by talking about it. Because you find that you just need to sit with them in that safe place, in that comfort, where he or she feels comfortable. So not to bring God into anything or spirituality, just sit and wait. And most of the time you will find after they start getting a bit better, they would realize and they would come back. On the other hand, when there is a non-believer who doesn't have a faith, I shouldn't say non-believer, who doesn't have a faith, comes in, suddenly finds religion. Yeah. On many occasions, we've had people who had come into one of our mental health units, and because I am a regular visitor there, they would say, "Oh, I want to become a Muslim." And it is a hard one, but also it's very easy, because that gives me an opportunity to talk to him about what Islam is about, and that we cannot just make a decision about becoming a Muslim. It's a very long, drawn process. And 9 out of 10, I would say 99% will never convert to Islam.
Yeah.
So it's about letting them know that you don't need to convert because we say revert because I'm a Muslim and you like the way I talk to you, that you think that's gonna, let's talk about your journey, how you feel about faith and religion. So that's how I do it. I hope that answers the question.
I think it answers it very well. Absolutely. We've got another one. Is it the responsibility of nurses to provide spiritual care, or is it chaplaincy work?
You see, this is a little bit of a political question, but I will answer it the way I think is fit to answer. Nurses have this. They have been told that you are clinical. Many nurses are found they're of faith, but feel restricted because they have been employed as nurses rather than a spiritual care. So there is a little bit of, I've had these questions many a times about whether they can talk about religion. You see, I'll give you an example. There was a patient who was of the same faith as this individual nurse, and the nurse, a kind lady, just thought, okay, one evening they were sitting together and they started talking about religion, and she happened to say something about the same faith that she had. And in a meeting, he mentioned it, that, oh, this nurse was really brilliant and she spoke to me in a manner that, I understood. And the nurse was kind of asked a question, who gave you, why did you do that? So it's a delicate thing. You have to go to your own management team and find out how far you could go in terms of your spirituality, in terms of the nurses. I hope that answers the question.
It does. It's one that always causes concern to people, isn't it? But I think on one hand, it's incredibly simple, but you're right. On another hand, it's incredibly complicated. So for me, as a nurse, you're a therapeutic tool. It's not about you. And so if you're able to offer something that person needs, that's different. It's like talking about politics. You can tell someone how to vote, or you can tell somebody how they can register a vote. You can tell somebody, oh, you can do this or you can do that, or the election's coming up. What you can't do is tell somebody how you vote and tell them to do the same. And I think it's the same thing with God and spirituality. But surely everybody has an internal life, don't they, of some kind or another. And if there's something that you can offer somebody that they've asked for, that's very different than sitting down and putting it on somebody. And I think, again, it's because it's such a personal thing, that personal and professional identity can get mixed up for people. And when you're in situations that are fast moving and fast changing, they are complicated. But I think all human interactions are a bit complicated, and we're quite used to dealing with all the other aspects. So I think you're absolutely right. Go speak to your management team and figure out how you want to manage it in a way that you would with any other complex question. And
also if you're not able to do that, just signpost the patient.
Well, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
If you think that he needs that support, she needs that support, just signpost.
Absolutely. Like you would with a dietitian, like you would with an OT. There's a reason we work as a team, isn't there? Because everybody has different gifts to bring to the table. Yeah. And, I remember when I was sort of first working, people were talking about helping somebody stay upright is like a tent pole, and you need lots of different guy ropes coming off it. You can't do the whole job by yourself, and it's not good for that person, and it's not good for you to do that. The more sources of support somebody has, the better they will be able to manage. And it just makes perfect sense to me, that. And I think you're absolutely right. So if there is anybody out there, make sure you know who needs to think this through. Speak to your management team, speak to your chaplains, and figure it out. Don't run scared from it and just think, well, this is an awkward problem. But absolutely embrace it. Fantastic. Thank you. Let's see if we've got any more questions coming in.
It's really interesting, isn't it? I think what you were just saying as well, Nicky, is about the sort of broader concept of spirituality as well, isn't it? That I think as nurses, we've got an important role to facilitate conversations that are about spirituality, in the sense that, people that we work with often in crisis, where they're reassessing and questioning the meaning of life and what direction they're going in and what's important to them and what it's all about, what is life all about, kind of thing. They're spiritual questions, aren't they, that we can answer them, and by asking those, it informs how we work with someone. And just what Yasmin was saying about, sitting with people and having a human connection. Sometimes I feel that, we run away from that stuff because we are kind of conditioned to think that we need to do something more technical or use a particular theory or model or approach with people, when actually what can be the most profound is just sitting with people during their hour of need. And for me, that's what led me into mental health nursing. It wasn't because I wanted to do psychoanalysis or CBT or any other number of sort of psychological approaches. I mean, they're all valid, of course they are. And but just being able to sit with somebody and connect with somebody is part of the essence of mental health nursing, isn't it? So I do think that there is a crossover in that way, but also that we can learn, from chaplains as well, and that, we should be working together and collaborating. But I wanted to ask as well about sort of the role of chaplaincy in terms of people's cultural needs being met, because for me, we do still work in a very white system. And particularly, when I've worked in prisons, I've really been struck by, how significant chaplains are. And Yasmin, you're talking about being a Muslim chaplain. Times, when I've worked with women, who've been Muslims, and, it's been the chaplains who've I've been able to connect them with, who've been able to help make sure that their cultural needs are met while they're in prison or in hospital. As chaplains who've often been able to advocate. I'm talking about women, but the same for men as well. So I guess, I don't know whether it's a question in particular, but something about your role in terms of cultural practices and supporting people in that way as well.
Yeah, well, in terms of cultural, this is the beauty about being a generic chaplain. I would go into the units where we've got people with different faiths. For example, if it's a Catholic patient, and I'm seeing him on a regular basis, but what's important to him is Mass.
Yeah.
So I organize on a monthly basis Mass service in that unit. So whoever wants to join in, together with my colleague, we would go in and do the Mass. He would do the delivery of Mass. Some people want to do confession, so I will provide that. Likewise, my colleagues, if there is a Muslim patient, and they would work with them, but as soon as they say, I need a prayer, I need someone to come and pray with me, they would contact me, and I would go and visit them in there. So all the cultural needs and everything, they're all met. We do tend to kind of focus on that very vigilantly, so that nobody misses out, as it were.
Yeah, it is really, really important, and I say particularly while people are in hospital and they're disconnected and cut off from their faiths. And just thinking also about religious ceremonies throughout the year and religious festivals, and again, as I was saying, really, I do think we're in a quite predominant white system, aren't we? And just being able to educate people around different religions. I suppose what I'm thinking of is my children grew up initially in Bradford, which is obviously very multicultural, and then we moved to York, which is very white. And when my son went to school in York, age 8, the teachers were saying to me, "Your son's very good at religious education. How does he know about all the different festivals?" And it was because he'd spent the first few years of his life in Bradford. The schools were absolutely brilliant at ensuring that the children knew about all the different festivals. And then, of course, we moved to York, and it was the opposite. So I think I was thinking about that within mental health, really. And I think the chaplains have got quite a crucial role, really, around educating people and making sure that people's needs are met, and making sure as a system that we're looking beyond sort of Christianity and sort of white cultural practices, and we're thinking much broader.
I also think that it also, I'm quite proud to say this, that at the time of Christmas, I organize the Christmas carols services. We have 16, 18 units where we have to do our services, and I would say to my Christian brothers, and this is where you're going to go and do a carol service here, and you're going to do that. And then when Diwali comes, we have celebration with that units. We do Eid. Last year when there was Eid, I went into a secure unit where we cooked biryani. They wanted to eat biryani, so we cooked biryani and all that. So cultural stuff we are very diverse. It kind of we're mindful that we need to be doing that, so that people are all the staff services, they're all aware of different cultures. So
that was one of the best things I think about becoming a mental health nurse, is because we were organising the kind of like making sure that we had things to do every day. We celebrated everything, literally everything, whether there was anybody of that faith there or not. It worked really brilliantly. It's a fantastic education and food programme. So what I am conscious of is it's gone so fast. And thank you so much, Yasmin, for your time. It's been absolutely brilliant. Yeah, we've still got questions coming in, so if we do get them, we'll pass them on to you. And I'll come to you both in a second for your sort of like any thoughts you just want to leave people with. But whilst you're having a think, because it is a bit of a thing to jump on somebody and just say, what are your final thoughts? I'll just mention that obviously tomorrow we're starting back, well, it's our last one, actually. It's our last episode of the MHNR conference 2020. And it's going to really lead on fantastically from this, because it's on older adults, working with older people, and also end of life care. And so Mick McKeown will be back with us, and also Ben Hannigan as a guest panelist. So send in your difficult questions for him. And also next week, we've got for MHTV, so next Thursday, we will be back, and we're with an all Wales episode. And I'm really excited about this because it's policy, voice and power, talking about how people can work within sort of structures of systems in order to get the best care possible for their people that they're supporting, and also for their colleagues, so that we're working in systems that allow that kind of human space. So I'll hand back over to Vanessa.
Yeah. Well, I think that Nicky says it's really gone fast tonight. I thought because we only had, we've been having big panels with like 3 or 4 people, so I thought it might be quite nice just having one guest on tonight. But it's actually gone just as fast, I think, because of the conversation we've had, and there's so much that we've covered, but I feel like there's so much we still have to cover as well. And like with lots of these sessions, maybe we need to have an ongoing conversation and come back to this at some point. But for me, I think the whole thing's been really interesting, Yasmin, and I appreciate your time. And I think the stuff you shared with us about COVID is what will stay with me, and your role over that period. And, I think really quite profound, the work that you did. And, thank goodness you were there and able to provide the support to the people over that period. And I think I'm sure people listening and watching will share those thoughts as well. So thank you, for that.
You're welcome. It was a team effort, so it was a pleasure to be doing what I did. I was humbled by it. But the last thing that I'm going to say is to have the strength to smile when we feel sad. Yeah, just have the strength to smile when we feel sad. Don't lose hope. Because we're in such a stressful situation at the moment that we feel stressed all the time. But having faith, whether you are a believer or not, there is something about faith, whatever you believe in. Be strong and stay united and love one another.
Absolutely. We're not going to get a better ending message than that, are we? I think all that remains is to say good night.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thanks everybody for joining in too.
Thank you. Good night, everyone. Bye.